We got a lot to do over the next 60 minutes. Kurt Helin will be here. Pro Basketball Talk at NBCSports.com is his jam. We'll get his thoughts on all things hoops on the professional side of things. NBA All-Star Game is coming up. All-Star Weekend, All-Star Break, which dovetails into another topic that I want to get to a little later on in the show. A real opportunity for women's hockey. Came to mind after watching the U.S. and Canada over at the Olympics yesterday in Milan. So get into that a little bit later on in the show. There is some NFL to talk about, and as I mentioned, there's even some golf news. Charlie Woods deciding where he's going to go play his college golf. Some news from baseball too. But we start things out as we always do on this Wednesday edition of Sports Wrap. It's time for the big story. And the big story is what's going on in Las Vegas with the Raiders. If you're talking about the NFL right now, the Klint Kubiak hire, the final hire of this coaching cycle, the 10th and final opening being filled by the former Seattle Seahawks offensive coordinator. And look, I'm trying to be hopeful. And I'm taking a little bit of liberties here with this being the part of the big story today because of the fact that I am based in Las Vegas and the Raiders are obviously one of the big projects for the city of Las Vegas is getting that franchise right. They've already got one of the most beautiful stadiums in all of the NFL, in Allegiant Stadium, but now it's about trying to get them to a place of respectability in this league so that they can flourish beyond just opposing teams coming in and watching them play, which was something Mark Davis actually talked about a bit yesterday when he met with the media after the press conference, where he talked about the need to get more Raider fans into the stadium to watch games. And frankly, they've been so bad over the last few years that opposing teams have just come in, bought up all the tickets, and you've had basically a road game at home for the Raiders. Thinks it's going to take a long time to change that. We'll hear from Mark Davis coming up in the next segment. But I want to talk about it from the standpoint of Klint Kubiak, who comes in with a very daunting task, as we mentioned on yesterday's show, in trying to improve a franchise that's been bad for so long. With little spurts here and there during the Derek Carr era, by and large, over the last decade plus, football for Raiders fans has not been very enjoyable. Now, why could that change? Well, if Klint Kubiak brings in the right people as his support staff, if they make the right decisions in the draft. I saw something yesterday, and this was fascinating to me, being interviewed. And look, maybe this is a head coach not wanting to show his cards and kind of play it close to the vest. But there were some that read an answer from Klint Kubiak yesterday with regard to the first pick in the draft about whether or not the Raiders are drafting Fernando Mendoza. You know, one of the Raiders announcers, one of the Raiders talk show hosts here in Vegas, tried to basically lead him into an answer talking about Fernando Mendoza. And it wasn't a when we draft Fernando Mendoza conversation. It was an if we draft Fernando Mendoza conversation. And yesterday on the show, I said they got to give this guy years. It's going to take years to fix this. They didn't get into this problem overnight. They're not going to get out of this problem overnight, despite what you see from teams like the Patriots, who were able to turn it around in 1 year. The Jaguars had a really nice year after struggling last year. There are those sorts of stories, but more times than not, it's more the Dan Campbell route, where it's going to take a couple of years before you can get back to respectability and maybe even achieve something special. But his answer on Fernando Mendoza made me wonder, is there a chance they don't even draft Fernando Mendoza? That they go outside the box? That they say there's so much to fix here that we need more than just a quarterback? That maybe they trade down and go get more draft picks and go get help in other spots and maybe go with a stopgap guy like Kirk Cousins next year here, which was kind of what they did this year with Geno Smith. Those are the sorts of things that I hear when I think of Klint Kubiak and watch Klint Kubiak talk about if we draft or when we have the conversations about Fernando Mendoza. It didn't sound like a foregone conclusion. Maybe he's coming in here with an idea that Fernando Mendoza isn't the guy he wants. Stay tuned. Watch this space. Big story number 2. What happened in Los Angeles last night at Crypto.com Arena with the Lakers and the San Antonio Spurs was one of the biggest farces, one of the biggest jokes, one of the biggest frauds perpetrated on a consumer that I think I've ever seen in my life. And if I were fans, I would en masse be running to a lawyer to ask for a lawsuit. Because if you pay the kind of money that you have to pay to go see a Lakers game, especially a Lakers versus Spurs game, and you got what you got from the Lakers last night, which was basically the G League Lakers going up against the Spurs playing all their stars, I'd ask for my money back. Because while it was fun to watch Victor Wembanyama score 25 points in the first quarter last night, and you thought, oh, maybe Wilt's record is at risk here. Maybe Wemby could go for 100 last night, which, by the way, if he played every minute of the game, he probably could have scored 100 last night. That's how bad the Lakers were. You had Jake LaRavia out there basically laughing as he fouled out early in the third quarter. He picked up 6 fouls by early in the third quarter because they had nobody that could defend Victor Wembanyama. If they wanted to give it to Wemby, a la Kobe's final game with the Lakers, and just say, hey, you go, he might have scored 100 last night. And that might have been something, I guess, to tell your kids about someday. But other than that, there was no redeeming value in that game last night. If you are a Lakers fan, if you are a basketball fan, unless you are a Spurs fan, there was no redeeming value in that game last night, in that product for the NBA, which granted was not on Peacock, it wasn't on Prime, it wasn't on ESPN, so people aren't going to go as crazy about it. It was only on NBA TV, which most people can't even find on their dial. All apologies to my friend Mikey M, who I love, who's an anchor over there. That was a joke. And as much as we're talking about teams tanking for draft picks, the Lakers put a non-competitive product on the floor last night. And I don't see how Adam Silver, sitting in his ivory tower over on Park Avenue, could possibly think that's a good thing for this league as it goes into this new TV contract that it has, as it's trying to win over fans. It's that time of the year where focus shifts away from the NFL and more towards the NBA and the NHL and, of course, baseball, with spring training right around the corner. But what happened last night in Los Angeles, that's as bad as it gets. You can't sit 4 of your starters and expect people to watch and be enthralled with what they're watching. We've got more NFL to talk about. The Klint Kubiak hire. Sam Yarnell joins me next. Welcome back to the show. From the big story, just partly about the Raiders, to some NFL talk. I don't know why I'm doing this with my hand. Sam Yarnell is here. I don't know what that was. I don't know what I'm doing.
Hey, Jason. Good to see you, too.
I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. Sam Yarnell is here. Kurt Helin will be here in 10 minutes to talk about some NBA. Gonna have to talk me off a ledge after that Lakers lineup that they put out on the floor last night. I mean, that was somewhere between a G League team and an NBA team. Like, that was bad. I mean, anyway, we'll get into it with him. I don't want to scoop myself now on this. So I want to get your thoughts, Sam, on what we heard from Klint Kubiak yesterday. But I also want to get your thoughts on this. I want to open with this. I have reason to try. I'm trying to be hopeful for the Raiders that Klint Kubiak's going to be their Dan Campbell, that he's going to be their Mike McDonald, that he's going to be that guy. Liam Cohen. I mean, that he's going to be that guy. And I'm hopeful of that.
Me too.
And one of the things that I'm concerned about is he's not going to get the time he needs to build this properly. One of the local members of the media here yesterday at the presser, where Mark Davis held court, Raiders owner Mark Davis held court after everything was said and done, asked Mark Davis about sort of bringing life back into Las Vegas and filling the stadium with Raiders fans. And Mark Davis's answer was very interesting to me. Listen.
On that note, Kubiak said that it's not going to take words, but it'll be actions to get more Raiders fans at Allegiant. How do you think winning over the next few seasons can really grow the fan base locally, but also add that differential in the stadium between opposing fans and home fans?
I think you're 100% right. Winning will help change that dynamic. When we first moved here, obviously we sold out the stadium locally, and everybody was excited. And unfortunately, we had a pandemic that didn't allow anybody to go to the stadium the second year. So we started off, and there was some excitement, and we just haven't followed through with winning. And Las Vegas is a great place for people to visit. Our stadium is probably one of the nicest in the world, and so people do want to come see it. And unfortunately, we haven't held up our end in winning to start creating and building that local fan base. But it all starts with the kids and stuff like that. So it may be 10 years or so before there is really a strong local fan base. But we're trying every day to get it better.
In that answer at the very end, he talked about 10 years. That tells me the mindset, at least in this organization, is long-term. It's a small thing, and it'll sound like a small thing, but it tells me that he gets it. That he understands that this is going to be a process. That maybe this time, after getting rid of Pete Carroll, they finally understand they can't go through this hamster wheel of different coaches, that they know it's got to be done differently this time, Sam.
Yeah, a couple of things. My first, the question that I think tons of football fans have and will have maybe in perpetuity for this ownership group, specifically the Davis family, right, is Mark Davis, if that really is how you feel, right, at the end, at what he said at the end, with it's going to take 10 years and we really got to grow this fan base, and that's, something that they're looking to do. Why did you leave California? You owned a large percentage of California, and you were competing with the Rams, which were bouncing back and forth between the Midwest, and the Chargers, which were bouncing back and forth between irrelevancy. You owned California for a very long time. You were the most historic team in California for a very long time, in a state that had 4 teams at times. If that is how they feel, it makes less and less sense, the move that they made to Las Vegas all those years ago. And I won't say it's a bad one, right? Every pro sports league is going to Las Vegas.
They're worth $1 zillion.
Going to Las Vegas,
they're one of the most valuable franchises in the league. So from a business standpoint, it wasn't a bad move.
Well, but then that's kind of contrary to his whole point, though, because if it was a good business move, then you wouldn't have to worry about building this fan base and be talking about it over the course of 10 years, right? It wouldn't necessarily matter as much. So again, it's all just very confusing and contradictory, as I think a lot of the sayings have been ever since they started moving this franchise around from Oakland to LA and then back to Oakland and then to Las Vegas. It's just been a very confusing, tumultuous ride for the Raiders as a franchise. And Jason, as our resident Raiders guy on the show, I just hope that they can put a product together on the field, and I'm actually confident that they can put a product together on the field and block out all the noise from the ownership group and win football games, because that is what matters at the end of the day.
Max Crosby, was a part of the conversation yesterday, both with Kubiak and both with Davis. They both said they want him back. I'm going to tell you something on this whole thing, by the way. I'm not going to take any of this seriously until we get into training camp next year, because all offseason, all I heard was this player's holding out, this player's not going to play, the guy with the Browns, who's going to be on there, or Bengals, refresh my memory.
Trey Hendrickson,
thank you.
But
you
also
had Trey
Myles
Hendrickson.
Garrett. Like, you were right with the Browns. We had this whole thing go on with Myles Garrett last year, Jason. And then look what he did, right? He requested a trade last offseason, didn't get traded, and then set the sack record. So
that's what I'm saying. I don't take this, and all this stuff is smoke until you get into training camp, and then you find out where the rubber meets the road. Good, best of luck to Klint Kubiak. I'm rooting for him, obviously being based out here in Las Vegas. Super Bowl ratings are in. What do you know? A few people watched the game, Sam Yarnell. Almost 125 million viewers. Peaked at an all-time U.S. record with 137.8 million viewers, and over 128 million watched the halftime show with Bad Bunny. And look, if it's a better game, I think more people are watching. That first half would have made a lot of people turn off the game. I think I think it's a sort of a break-even year on the viewership standpoint for the league, despite the little fluctuations, ups and downs that you see here.
Yeah, those people on Park Avenue better be thanking their lucky stars that they hired Benito to do the halftime show, because the product that they put on the field was not good enough to warrant the viewership that they got, and they were able to keep, like you said, the water kind of at level this year after a very bad year of football in the league.
Yeah, he had back-to-back Super Bowls that were just not very entertaining. And the Eagles molly-whopping the Chiefs was not a fun watch unless you were an Eagles fan, and what took place on Sunday, not all that much fun unless you're a Seahawks fan. Certainly didn't captivate the nation, but still huge numbers for the NFL, as much as some people in political circles might wish otherwise. Kurt Helin will talk NBA next. Welcome back. Time to talk some NBA, because if it's a Wednesday on Sports Wrap, that's what we do. We welcome in our friend Kurt Helin of Pro Basketball Talk at NBCSports.com to hang out with us. He's getting all jazzed up for all those All-Star Game parties that he's going to be attending in Los Angeles. Yeah, party hard. I got to admit, I was sitting there thinking to myself today, man, why didn't I try to go to L.A. for all the All-Star Game festive? It's a 4-hour drive from where I am. I do that drive all the time to Palm Springs. I missed out.
It's interesting. The parties are, I think you're going to see them, at least from my perspective, or the media's perspective, more this year, only because normally we're at the game, which ends at 11, whatever. But because of the Olympics and the time shift, the games all Saturday and Sunday both start at 2 p.m. Pacific. We're out of there by 6. We can go home, freshen up, and still get to these parties that normally you're racing to get to. So they're spread all over LA, but yeah, the parties are going to be interesting this year. There's some big ones. I've
also heard there's a huge push by the NBA this year that they're leaning on content creators. Is that true? Oh, yes. That they've given press access to 200 content creators, something like that?
It is exactly that. It is 200 online content creators who are getting special access and media access and stuff. That should be an experience.
There's my boomer head shake. It's my boomer head shake.
Let's just say within the NBA media room last night now this wasn't at Intuit, it was at the Laker game, but there was some concern about how that might affect the rest of us trying to do our jobs, but we'll see.
Give me a thought. I know, Sam, you look like you're just dying to ask a question. My God, go already. I can see it in your face.
This is what I mentioned to you in the green room, Kurt, that I was a little confused about something and going to save it for the second segment, but the cat's out of the bag, so okay. I have to address it now. Can you please explain this All-Star Game format to me? It feels like it's been changed. I don't really understand it. Now there's a round robin going on, 2 USA teams. What is going on with this All-Star Game? How is it all going to work?
Yeah, it's the second year of the round robin concept, because just playing a straight up game the guys weren't interested in. Look, they're trying to find, and they maybe stumbled on it for at least a little bit with this. They've been trying to find a way to get guys to play hard and care. What they've gone with is the USA versus international idea, USA versus the world. The problem with that is you can put together, especially the starting 5 for the world is, great. And, they lost Dončić. They've lost SGA. They might Dončić, SGA, and, Dončić will probably play, actually. SGA is out. We'll see about Giannis. But the point being, once you got about 8, it was kind of thin on the world side. So what they decided to do was put together 3 teams that will play each other, and just like you said, everybody plays everybody in kind of a round robin. Then the championship game is the top 2 of them. It's short 12-minute one-quarter games. There's 3 of them to get the 3 teams to play each other, and then one final one between the 2 leaders at the end of that. And we'll see if that actually brings more. At the end of the day, the format's the format. If the guys play hard, people will figure it out and like it. If they treat this like they treat most All-Star games, then it will still be flat. And we'll see how that goes. I've got a whole story about coming out this weekend about how Victor Wembanyama and others, especially the international players, seem into this idea. Again, we'll see if that really motivates the U.S. or anybody, at 2:00 in the afternoon on Sunday.
Yeah, look, if they're playing, if the world guys play hard, it might infuse some life into it. And the American, teams and players are like, oh, we better play or we're going to get embarrassed.
Yeah, I think the national pride thing. Look, it works really well with Four Nations and hockey, and I think they're hoping just to catch a little of that magic. It's not going to be the same, but if they can get the guys to just play hard enough, like it's not going to look like Game 7 of the finals. Nobody expects it to, but if you can get guys to just play hard enough and care enough and play a little defense, that it makes it real basketball, then we got something.
All right. Fair enough. I'll buy that for $1. I want to get your thoughts on what we saw last night, this Lakers game, which wasn't much of a game, where you basically had the Lakers play basically their G League team against one of the best teams in the league. What was the feeling like? I want to get your thoughts on what the feeling was like around did you get the sense fans were kind of pissed off? That there was almost this, really, we've got to watch this for 3 quarters or 4 quarters or however long Lakers fans stay at games these days, that they actually, could you feel the anxiety in the arena? Or was it, hey, maybe Wemby will go off for 70 and I'll see something special anyway?
Yeah, there was a resignation that this was going to be ugly, and it was from the start. I mean, Wemby had 25 in the first quarter and did whatever he wanted, and this game was it was literally garbage time by halftime. You knew this game was over, unless we got the Drew Timme-led comeback, which seemed unlikely. There was, I think, for some fans, some frustration. There's always fans who have come, look, with their signs, like, I came to see LeBron, I came to see whomever, and to LeBron's credit, he's 41, man. It's a back-to-back with travel. Like, he's going to miss some of these games. And the Lakers played everybody in their national TV game. This was not a national TV game. So you get what you get sometimes. And I think this is the NBA schedule. If you're going to put these a lot of back-to-backs together with an older team like the Lakers, you're going to get a lot of this. There was frustration in the building, some, but there was. My vibe was almost a sense of resignation. Like, all right, this is what this is. This is what we get.
It was a tough watch. Go ahead, Sam.
Kurt, elsewhere in the West, I guess just on the other side of this game, the Spurs. Listen, the Thunder have been this team that they started out so hot. We were talking about them in historical senses at the beginning of the season, and then they tailed off, and now they're 5-5 in their last 10. The Jared McCain acquisition looks great, but are they a better team than the Spurs right now?
I think so. I think in a 7-game series, I think what you're getting is the midseason malaise that comes to a lot of teams, especially right before. Look, the weeks or 2 weeks before the All-Star break every year is about like, Sam, you in school the week before spring break. Not very focused, not very in there, not idiot. Like they're just
waiting for the flight to Cabo,
ready to go. Yeah. So I think you get a lot of that, but in their case also you've got injuries. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is out through the All-Star break. He's not going to play in the game, but look, man, you lose your MVP, you're not quite the same. They've had issues, so I think it's more injuries and stuff. I think this is a team that gets a little bit healthy and flips the switch.
All right. Kurt Helin's going to hang out for one more segment. I have an interesting story that I want to talk about with you. In addition to Jason Tatum, who looks like he's getting ready to come back. Sounds like it. We'll get to it next. Thanks for being with us. Halfway home on this Wednesday edition of Sports Wrap. Kurt Helin joins us. Pro basketball talk at NBCSports.com. Barstool had an interesting thing. Rare I ever say that. About an investment group, a group of people with money trying to get Mark Cuban to buy back the Mavericks. And the idea behind it is that it doesn't look like sports betting's coming to Texas anytime soon, and that the Adelsons might just want to cut their losses and say, we're getting out from this and sell it back to Mark Cuban. Is there anything to this?
No, Mark Cuban hasn't commented on this, but the vibe I got, what I heard was that while that is real, while the investors have talked to or are talking to Cuban or wherever that stands in the process, the Adelsons are not there. Look, it's really just not it's not how billionaires act in the sense of, well, that didn't work out in the short term, I'm just going to dump this. That tends not to be how they do business. It tends to be, hey, this isn't going down in value. We're not losing money on this. Let's hold on to this asset because what they want to build, which is, look, it's no secret, they want the gambling in Texas.
Yeah.
They want to build a Venetian Vegas style resort with an arena attached, but all this other stuff. They can wait. They can wait this out, and I think that that's kind of the plan. There's no financial pressure for them to sell it, so I would be really surprised if they did in the short term. Expansion's coming, and if it didn't go to Vegas, well, could they do all sorts of things because they've obviously got the Sands and connections there. So I think that's more of just. I think it's more wait and see with them, but we'll see. I don't know anybody with the Adelsons, but I also say I've heard nothing serious outside of that story of unnamed investors wanting to get in the game short.
Okay. Go ahead, Kurt. Go ahead, Sam.
Kurt, before we get to Jason's beloved Knicks, which I know he will want to ask you about, I will ask you about the team that they are chasing in the Eastern Conference, the Boston Celtics.
Not chasing the Celtics. Stop it.
They just beat them on Sunday, yeah.
They're just behind them in the standings. I was just saying it to get a nudge into Jason, which I successfully did. Listen, though, the Celtics are 7-3 over their last 10 games. Like, they're not in. I know they just lost to the Knicks, and I know Knicks fans are very quick to point that out to the Celtics. However, this is not a team that I think anyone would consider in dire straits right now. Jason Tatum, however, is running fives with the G League team, however many months removed from shredding his Achilles. How do you feel about the vibe around the Boston Celtics right now?
Well, they've played it down, and he's kind of like, hey, they've played well. Do I want to come in and mess with the chemistry and all that? It's Jason Tatum, man. Like, your team is better with him on it. And it's one thing to be working out and getting close. But like you said, going down to the G League and running with 5-man groups there, because NBA teams don't practice. I mean, it's just, I think we've talked about it here, but it's a little known fact. During the season, there are a handful of practices. You don't get those kind of runs. You're going, your fives are the guys who don't play and assistant coaches and a couple of ball boys, right? So this was like a real practice, but you don't do that unless you're kind of serious. And if Tatum comes back in this East, with all due respect to the Knicks, who I would probably still pick as the favorite right now if you made me pick who's coming out, whether you're talking about them or Detroit or whomever, Boston with Tatum, they might be the team to beat. Like, that team, if it has time, if he can, I don't expect him to be 100% himself, but if they can get 90% of Jason Tatum with Jaylen Brown the way he's playing and a nice pickup of Vucevic to give them a little shooting and depth at the 5, they got a chance.
Topic of tanking is very much top of mind again, given what happened with the Jazz last week.
Twice.
And meanwhile, you got the Pacers beating the Knicks last night. So explain to me, if there is anything that you can think of, that anybody that's come to mind, relegation. I've heard everything from relegation to, hey, let's stop the winning percentage at the All-Star break. I think Richard Jefferson brought up that idea. Can you give me something here? Yeah, Richard Jefferson had an idea. He said, let's stop that. Sam didn't hear this, clearly, because his reaction is, I could tell it's genuine. He said, just wherever your winning percentage is at the All-Star break, that's where it is for the draft, for the purposes of the ping pong balls, because then you can't tank in the second half. Yes. I think having teams tanking by Thanksgiving is a great idea.
Right. That idea is bad, but the problem is every idea has its flaws. The two I kind of think they're leaning towards, and there will be some kind of action, because right now you literally have 1/3 of the league. You have at least 10 teams tanking, and it's going to get ugly. If you think Utah sitting Markkanen and Jaren Jackson Jr. in the 4th is ugly, wait. It is going to be a mess down the stretch for these teams, because this is a particularly deep draft. The two options I kind of like are either A, you've got to change restrictions on picks. You can say top 4 or set some limits, like only top 4, whatever. Where you end up, what's a problem right now is with Utah and Washington both have top 8 protected. And now they've got to finish in the bottom 4 or 5 to have a really good chance of keeping their pick going into the lottery. So it's going to be ugly for these teams. The other option is to set up some sort of independent committee that docks teams for tanking. There's could be people who say, hey, Utah, you crossed the line. So when it gets to the lottery and you would have a 12% chance or whatever, like however many ping pong balls you get, we're going to take some of those away. You can try to do that. I don't know how you set up that independent body and keep it,
truly independent.
That's you're adding another layer of bureaucracy. What could possibly go wrong? But I don't know what the problem. The problem ultimately is the way basketball is as a sport. You are incentivized to tank.
Kurt Helin, Pro Basketball Talk at NBCSports.com. Always appreciate you, my man. Enjoy All-Star Weekend. Enjoy those crazy parties. Don't do anything I wouldn't do.
Well, that leaves it pretty wide open. Okay.
Welcome back to the show. Odds and Ends wraps it up 10 minutes from now. The Olympics well underway. The women's hockey team steamrolling. Sam Yarnell, which leads me to the question that you see at the top of the screen. Well, you don't see it, but our audience on over 260 affiliates across the U.S. and Canada, and everybody watching on YouTube and wherever else you might be consuming the show can see it. Could women's hockey be the next boom in women's sports? I say yes. And the reason I say yes is the timing. A lot of people aren't really enamored with these Olympics so far. It hasn't really captivated the imaginations of people. I think that will change. Now that the NFL's done, people have a little more time to consume it. There's not, the NBA's heading into the All-Star break. There is no NHL. There's not a lot, unless you're sitting by the TV watching spring training games on MLB.TV. There's not really anything to go crazy about. This is a real opportunity, I think, for hockey between the men's side of the hockey ledger and now the women's side. The women beat up on Canada yesterday. Took them on the money line, by the way. 5-0 the final for the U.S. women's hockey team. Why are you shaking your head, man?
Because I told you to lay the puck and a half. I told you to lay the goal and a half, and you could have had plus money on that, but you said, no, I just want to bet their money line. 5-0? Whomping?
Yes, it was. I played it a little safe, and it cost me a few bucks. But anyway, U.S. women's team wins 5-0. And it got me wondering if they kind of, captivate the imaginations, again, to use that phrase, and sort of run roughshod through this Olympics, is there the real opportunity to grow the women's professional game? And the reason I say yes is this. Of all the sports that translate from men's sports to women's sports, and I know this isn't a fair thing that it has to be this way, but it is. If you watch the WNBA, it's a noticeably different game than the NBA. Played below the rim, much more fundamentally sound, although I think some of that is going away with some of the physicality in the game. But nonetheless, it's a different game than the men's professional game. Obviously, it doesn't translate to football because it's flag and all of that stuff. Baseball versus softball, different games, different sports. Hockey is the one sport that when I watch the women's game, and I get it, you're going to say faster, bigger, stronger, but the essence of the game to me is still very much the same when you watch it from end to end and the way the game is played. And I think that offers an opportunity. You look at the attendance numbers for women's professional hockey, and I get TV deals and time of year and, being able to get into people's consciousness is a big deal. But I feel like there's a real opportunity if this women's team wins gold and the right narrative is formed and the story is told the right way, that you could see a real boom with women's hockey professionally in the United States based on what we've seen in the early days of the PWHL.
I couldn't agree with your point anymore. And when you sent it to me last night, it was something that I had kind of, started thinking about as we were watching that USA-Canada game. But even earlier in the week when the U.S. was playing another team, I kind of thought about it as they started the Olympic women's hockey before the Olympic men's hockey. And maybe it's a product of the NHL being on their Olympic break and me craving to watch some sort of an ice sport. But I found myself watching women's hockey very frequently, Jason. I think to your point, we're seeing a ton of boom across these women's sports right now, right? I think that the timing of it all that you mentioned. Also, let's not forget, right? This is also coming off the heels of this massive CBA in the WNBA that we have that's upped their minimum salary. I think upwards of like 4 times potentially.
If they can get it signed.
Initial reports are saying.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is a great time in women's sports. But what I'll counter with your point about winning gold, I would say that, and maybe it's because of the construction of the PWHL and how they're playing at the Olympics, but with there being so many other PWHL players on these other Olympic teams, I might argue that the U.S. getting all the way to the final and then being upset by a nation that they weren't supposed to be upset by could be even better for women's hockey and draw even more people to watch, the New York Sirens play in the PWHL instead of going to a Devils or Rangers game.
I wonder if Canada yesterday, had they been fully healthy, they were missing one of their stars. Had Canada been fully healthy, how much more competitive that game would have been. U.S. beat them up pretty good in the friendlies that they played leading into the Olympics. I wonder who's going to be able to challenge them. And I agree with you. I think it'll be a far more compelling watch and a better story to tell, if you have a Brandi Chastain moment, so to speak, where you have drama that, again, I hate to use the phrase over again, it's the 3rd time in the segment, captivate the imagination at the end of the day. Ding. I'd like to see something like that. I'd rather see somebody challenge them rather than them be, basketball's version of the dream team in the early days where they're just beating up on everybody. I still think there's a real opportunity there, though. When you look at the Professional Women's Hockey League, I'm not even sure who carries those games. Who carries the PWHL?
I believe they're streamed. I believe you can stream them all.
Interesting. Oh, I think it's going to be. I'm watching. I watched that game yesterday because I had a betting interest. To be brutally honest, otherwise I wasn't going to be all that plugged into it. And once I actually started watching, I'm like, wow, they're really good. That was the first thing that jumped out to me. I was like, man, they're good. They're fast. And the second thing is this translates. Like I said, if you're a hockey fan. If you like hockey, you should like this. You should like this brand of hockey if you like hockey, Sam.
Yeah, definitely. You're exactly right. And I think, there is an element of it that there was an amazing behind the back pass made in the game yesterday. And the woman who made it had gone viral, I don't know, 4 months ago, for doing the same thing in a college hockey game. So yeah, it's nice to see the levels of that kind of transcend sports.
And the college hockey foundation that's been laid for the women's game also is very helpful in that regard. All right, odds and ends. We'll wrap it up next. Just about time to put the wraps on this baby for a Wednesday. Tomorrow on the show, Michael McCarthy from Front Office Sports. Talk about some of the sports media landscape coming out of the Super Bowl. A lot going on in baseball. Where are you going to be watching your teams this year? I don't know if any fans really know where they're going to be watching their teams this year. We'll talk about that more with Michael McCarthy from Front Office Sports, as spring training will be here soon enough. Also, usually joined by our friend Dennis Bernstein, the fourthperiod.com, Sirius XM NHL Radio. Hopefully catch up with him, talk about the hockey as well. A couple of reminders before we go. If you haven't done so yet, make sure to subscribe to the Sports Wrap with Jason Page podcast, available on all your favorite podcasting platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Odyssey, Amazon, anywhere you get an audio podcast. You can listen to this show Monday through Friday, 45 minutes waiting there for you early each afternoon. We also have the Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel. This is the place for all things Sports Wrap with Jason Page. Audio version of the show, the TV version of the show. You can get them there. And in the case of the TV show, it's 45 minutes commercial free on the YouTube channel. We also have bonus interviews, extra content. Sports Wrap shorts are there. These are 1 to 3 minute long videos recapping the top stories of the day when they break Also, the biggest games every day and night. All of that on the Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel. Sports Wrap shorts available there. Also on our TikTok, Sports Wrap Jason Page is the name to look for there. And on Instagram, you guessed it, Sports Wrap Jason Page. And without any further delay, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for some odds and ends. Odds and ends, Sam Yarnell. Charlie Woods has decided, he's made the decision, his version of it, where he's going to take his collegiate golfing skills. Charlie Woods, the son of Tiger Woods, is going to Florida State.
Yeah, good for him. ACC golf, nothing like it.
He's not even going to be the second. He's not even going to be the best player on his own team. That's the scary part.
Yeah.
The guy that's going there is the number 1 ranked junior player in the world is going to play there as well.
Well, and they've already got some certified sticks on their team.
Studs.
This is an era of golf that is very interesting because the college game has become, more so than ever, it feels like, the pipeline for not only the Korn Ferry Tour, but also guys who go straight into Q school and guys who get their PGA cards almost immediately. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it is interesting to see Charlie go there. You have to assume, I think with college golf, I think the way it works is you have to play for at least, I want to say it's like baseball. You have to play at least 3 years before you can turn pro.
I think it's two.
But regardless, it'll be fun to watch Charlie over the next couple of years until he's ready for the PGA, because I think that's all where we assume he's going.
We do, but it's a big leap from collegiate golf to the PGA Tour, and I think everybody thinks it's a foregone conclusion. Well, you want to talk about a guy? I mean, I wonder who had more pressure on him, Bronny or Charlie Woods, when we talk about playing at the professional level. Maybe the expectations just weren't as high for Bronny. I think they're going to be ridiculously high for Charlie Woods.
I think the pressure was higher on Bronny. I think the expectations are higher on Charlie, if that makes sense. I think with Bronny, because of the nature of there being a draft for his sport and where he went within that draft and the coverage leading up to it, and the fact that he was an individual on a team made a very certain unique angle for that. Whereas with Charlie, it's a little bit different because of the individual nature of golf. And also, like, quite frankly, and this isn't to say that Tiger is anywhere like better of an athlete than LeBron is, right? Tiger just has a more firm stance in the business side of golf than it feels like on its face LeBron does in the business side of basketball. So Charlie may have more of a safety net to fall back on in terms of sponsorships and companies boosting him up that are, owned by Tiger.
Let's skip the Players' Championship stuff because I don't really care enough about it. I want to talk about hamate bones.
The wind looks crazy. I'll tell you that.
Hamate bone. I want to talk about hamate bones today because the Mets, I could just see Mets. It's like the scene in Naked Gun 33rd and 3rd. Everybody slaps their head collectively at once. That's Mets fans right now with the news that Francisco Lindor is going to miss most of spring training, and it sounds like he might make it back for opening day, but he's got an issue with his hamate bone. And apparently you informed me before we started the show today, this is like an epidemic. It's like Tommy John now in baseball, these hamate bones.
Yeah, we've gotten in the first 2 days, the first days that pitchers and catchers are reporting and everyone's kind of getting down to spring training, we are getting some crazy injury news. The 3 hamate bones that you referenced, obviously the Francisco Lindor one. We also knew about Jackson Holliday yesterday. He's got a broken hamate bone. And this morning we found out Corbin Carroll's also got a broken hamate bone. I'll say this, Jason, with specifically for the 2 shortstops for Holliday and Lindor, it's not it is a tedious recovery process, and it's an important one because it's a bone that's in your pinky. When you're an infielder, it's so important to field and ground balls, and it's a bone that takes forever to recover. It is not a fun recovery these guys are going to have to go through.
By the way, before we go, Kurt Helin just dropping this one on me via text. Isaiah Stewart gets 7 games for the brawl that we were talking about off air. You guys didn't see it, but believe it or not, we actually talked about it. Isaiah Stewart gets 7 games. Miles Bridges gets 4. Musa Diabate gets 4, and Jalen Duren gets 2. So that's the latest on that. And that does it for us. Thank you to Kurt Helin. Thanks to you, Sam Yarnell. 7 games without Isaiah Stewart for the Pistons. We'll see how it plays out. We'll catch you back here on Thursday for an all-new edition of Sports Wrap. Until then, I'm Jason Page. Bye-bye. Hi there. I'm Jason Page. You like what you're watching? Subscribe. We've got Sports Wrap shorts on this channel. We've got the show. We've got clips from the show. What else do you have to do? You probably follow a lot of other things that aren't half as exciting. They're not half as exciting as this show is. So what are you waiting for? Click the subscribe button, follow the channel, watch the content. Bye.